So critical race theory, which is behind a lot of this anti-cop animus as well, some of the same tenets of critical theory and critical race theory, and an offshoot of it, can explain well why liberals would rather see the body bags pile up than clean up their own cities and back the cops. I've never seen it better explained than the two big tenets of critical theory and critical race theory. Better than this one example, this one piece. It's in the Hill. It'll be in my newsletter today. I strongly encourage you to read it, bongino.com/newsletter, if you'd like to get on my newsletter email list every day. Jonathan Turley, The Hill, excuse me. The rise of a generation of censors. Law schools are the latest battlement. The latest battlement over free speech. Folks, this is serious. The article is a serious article that highlights a very serious problem. But within the piece is a paragraph that perfectly encapsulates two tenets of critical theory and critical race theory you need to understand, and the why liberals are doing this. I just explained to you why they won't back the cops and let the and they're letting the body bags pile up. But critical theory in the next is going to tie right back to the whole thing. The show will weave in, I hope, nicely for you. There's a paragraph in there I'm going to get to in a second, but the gist of the piece is this: that law schools now are censoring any opposing thoughts when it comes to topics they deem controversial, like transgender rights or whatever it may be. Law schools now are banning or outright censoring any opposition. Well, folks, what's the problem with that? Well, ladies and gentlemen, where do you think our judges and lawyers come from? Law schools. You're going to have a generation of judges who are never going to see the pro-life arguments, never going to see the pro-Second Amendment arguments, never going to see the religious liberty arguments when it comes to transgender rights or whatever it may be. They're never going to see any of that. They're only going to get one side. And when you only get one side, there only is one side. But that's not the way courts work. There's a defendant and a plaintiff. Courts are two-sided. They're adversarial by nature. That's why they're courts. Has anyone ever gone into court to fight a case that didn't exist? I'd like to fight the lawsuit against me for what? No, it wasn't a lawsuit yet. I'm just here to get out ahead of it just in case. You ever seen that? Anyone ever heard of that? Law schools are now censoring speech. We're going to have an entire generation of lawyers who have no legal knowledge whatsoever about issues that matter to conservatives. Religious liberty, the Second Amendment, freedom, all of it. I want you to check out this paragraph from the piece. So Duke was going to have a debate, a symposium about transgender rights and activism and the legal consequences of both. Well, a website, Above the Law, like a Steven Seagal movie there, Above the Law said, no, we can't have that. And I'm going to read this paragraph, and you're going to see two big tenets in critical theory are highlighted, really the sad tenets, but highlighted beautifully in this. From the piece, the Above the Law criticism of Duke was illustrative of the new anti-free speech movement that's now taking hold in law schools and legal publications. Academic freedom and free speech are denounced as tools to, quote, marginalize others. Patrice sums up why both the student editors and the Duke faculty must be condemned. Quote, a vigorous and open exchange of ideas is valuable only to the extent it improves the academic mission of improving the human condition. Is transgender skepticism within that field? It shouldn't be, but here we are. In other words, you're entitled to free speech so long as you cannot be accused of, quote, marginalizing others. There it is. This piece, read it. It's in my newsletter today. Sums up perfectly two big tenets of critical theory and critical race theory that are being jammed down your throat, and I'll explain to you the why right now. Tenet number one of critical theory and critical race theory. That knowledge, facts, data, that knowledge is a construct of power. You'll hear me say it now. You've heard me say it 1,000 times. Why? Because without that idea, critical theory, it totally collapses. Because they can't debate on the merits of critical theory. They can't. They can't cite specific examples of some white oppressor holding them down, a class and a cabal of white oppressors holding them down. So what they do is they use these flowery words without specific definitions to never get lost in the granular detail. And when they do get lost in the granular detail and they try to argue something where the facts say otherwise, they just say, no, those aren't real facts. You're just manipulating the facts to obtain and keep power. Therefore, knowledge is a construct of power. You see it in there where it says, look at this, go back to that. It says a vigorous and open exchange of ideas is valuable only to the extent it improves the academic mission of improving the condition. That right there sums up beautifully this ridiculous tenet of critical theory that you can't know anything if you're a white person because everything you've been taught has been to solidify your position as an oppressor of minorities. You want to argue the tax rates, what they were? You're just arguing the tax rates because knowledge is a construct of power. No, but I can prove that's what the tax rates are. You're just doing it because you're the white oppressor. How do you win that argument? The answer is you can't. That's the point. They don't want, quote, a vigorous and open exchange of ideas because they'll lose. They can't prove any of this stuff. Who oppressed you? No, I want a name. If some white man oppressed you because of your race, I'd like to know. We'll call him out on this show because unlike you, we actually hate racism and fight it here. We believe in big R, God-given rights for everyone. They can't. So by you asking a direct question, a systemic racism, what system exactly has been racist towards you so we can call it out? They won't cite it. Then they say, no. You demanding an open exchange of ideas, that means you're the oppressor and your challenge is only meant to solidify your position as an oppressor of me. You're like, wait, what? What are you even talking about? A vigorous and open exchange of ideas is now their enemy. That's number one. Knowledge is a construct of power for them. It is a way to stop a vigorous and open exchange of ideas. Number two. Again, encapsulated in this paragraph beautifully. They need a permanent class of victims. You see it here? Academic freedom and free speech from the Hill piece are denounced as tools to, quote, marginalize others. You get it? Free speech and the vigorous exchange of ideas are only, quote, tools to marginalize others. Well, the marginalized, it's what? Marginalized is a synonym for what? Victims. But if you don't have a permanent victim class, you don't have people who are marginalized. Therefore, there's no tool to marginalize you, and critical race theory falls apart. The only way to prove that the system is racist is to create a massive class of victims who are marginalized through free speech. You see how the tools all fit together? Vigorous and open debate has to be stopped because it's only a tool. It is a tool, the use of knowledge and debate, to victimize and marginalize people and create a permanent underclass. But for that, you need a permanent underclass. Now you see the intersectionality portion of this? How everyone to them is a victim? Union workers, minorities, Asians, Muslims, everybody's a victim. Everybody's a victim. They can't function without a permanent underclass of oppressed people who are victims. This is where PC culture comes in, and this is the reason they tell everyone, blacks, Hispanics, immigrants, everyone, the other side's coming for you. Now do you understand the fear agenda I addressed yesterday, again, on the radio program and on the show? The only way to create an underclass of victims that is a victim of vigorous and open exchange of ideas and free speech is to create victims. How do you create victims? Through fear. They're coming for you. That's what a victim is, right? A victim has to be victimized, which requires a victimizer. The problem is, it's really hard to claim Barack Obama, Michelle Obama, Kamala Harris, and others are victims. So they just keep them flowery, these terms. Like, oh, it's systemic racism. But have you personally been victimized? Can you point someone out who victimized you because of your race? Oh, I can't. Well, of course you can. That's why they engage in endless fear mongering. They want you to believe you're the victim because they need a victimizer, and that victimizer is the white person in critical race theory. You get it? Does it all tie together now? Not a specific white person, the general white male patriarchy. Not a specific white person because they can never point anyone out. Fear. Everything is based in fear. There's always a victimizer trying to victimize you. The loss of liberty throughout human history. This is why socialists absolutely love critical theory. The loss of liberty throughout human history has always been preceded first by a fear campaign. Somebody is coming for you and will protect you. The nice part about critical theory and critical race theory for the socialist who wants to take away your liberty and they need fear to do it is they can constantly pump you full of critical race theory and never have to prove their case because a, quote, vigorous and open exchange of ideas isn't valuable and is just a weapon to marginalize others. It's the Kafka trap. You're the victimizer. No, I'm not. Your denials are more proof that you're a victimizer. That's why you're denying it. It's an illogical exercise. Look it up, Kafka trap. You deny being a racist, your denials are more evidence you're a racist and you're victimizing people. Therefore, we need to protect them. You should forfeit your civil liberties over to us. They need fear. Critical theory and critical race theory doesn't work without fear. Fear is the one key component to all of this. Now, do you see why I opened up the show the way I did with the door-to-door campaign over the coronavirus? What does that have to do with critical theory? Critical theory, critical race theory, again, offshoots of one another, but similar ideas. Critical theory needs fear. Fear is the fertilizer. You can't be oppressed if you don't have an oppressor. And if you can't specifically point out an oppressor, they have to keep you scared all the time that oppressor is always around the corner. Fear is the coin of the realm for them. They need fear.